The day our youngest son, Alex, left for college was the day I packed my life into 2 suitcases. The silence in that house was a physical thing, a thick, heavy blanket I hadn't realized we'd been living beneath for years. My husband, Mark, found me in the hallway, surrounded by the ghosts of a 25-year marriage. The sight on his face, a mask of sheer shock and betrayal, is something I will never forget. "So this was the plan?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You were just waiting for them to leave to destroy everything we built?" He thinks I'm a traitor. He feels this was some cold, premeditated conspiracy. But he has no idea how long I've been gone already. The perfect house of cards. From the outside, we were the model for the suburban dream. We had a 25-year marriage, a gorgeous home, a daughter in med school, and a son moving off to a prestigious university. Mark was, by all accounts, a good spouse. He provided for us, coached our kids' soccer teams, and was the life of every neighborhood barbecue. We weren't just a couple. We were a team, a well-oiled machine dedicated to one single project, effectively launching our 2 children into the world. But after the noise of family life diminished, the silence between us was deafening. It wasn't a peaceful stillness. It was an emptiness. For years, our shared purpose had been the kids. Their routines became our timetable. Their dreams became our conversations. Their future was our whole focus. We had gotten so skilled at being parents that we completely forgot how to be partners. That project, raising our family, was the glue holding our marriage together. And with the job finished, all that was left were 2 strangers standing in a corridor filled with memories that didn't feel like ours anymore. He saw a shared existence. I saw a common project that had just finished. The unraveling. To understand why that quiet hallway seemed more like a freedom than a betrayal, you have to comprehend the 1,000 tiny cuts that lead to the final wound. These things don't just happen overnight. A marriage doesn't suddenly break. It erodes slowly and silently until one day you realize you're standing on the edge of a cliff. They call it gray divorce, this trend of couples splitting up after 50. It's rarely about one major event. It's about a slow-motion disintegration that no one else can witness. And ours had been disintegrating for a decade. A history of quiet departures. It started with small things. About 5 years ago, I was promised a huge promotion at work. It was a career I'd dreamed of, one that would imply more travel and longer hours. I was ecstatic. When I told Mark, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's terrific, honey," he responded. "But what about the kids? Sarah has her finals, and Alex's travel team is particularly demanding this season. The timing is just difficult." It wasn't a no, but it clearly wasn't a yes either. It was a kind, caring reminder that my function was already defined. I was the caregiver, the house manager, and the stable presence. My aims were secondary. I turned down the promotion. I told myself it was for the kids, but a small part of me realized it was the first time I packed a bag in my thoughts. Then came the silent dinners. As the kids got older and more independent, our dinner talks transformed into interviews. "How was your day, Sarah? Did you finish that project, Alex?" We could speak for an hour, but it was all about them. Once they departed the table, Mark and I were left staring at each other across an awkward abyss of quiet. I'd ask about his day, and he'd give me a one-word answer before turning on the TV. We had lost the ability to just talk to each other. And believe me, I tried. As Alex's high school graduation loomed, I tried to initiate a conversation about us. "What are we going to do when it's just the 2 of us?" I'd inquire, attempting to sound casual. "We can finally travel. Maybe take that trip to Italy we always talked about." Mark would just wave a hand dismissively. "We'll have plenty of time for that," he'd reply. "Let's just get Alex off to school first." He saw the empty nest as a finish line, a time to unwind. I saw it as an impending crisis, a moment where we'd have to face the fact that we had nothing left in common but our children. The true turning point for me, the time I truly started to doubt everything, was my 45th birthday. The kids were teenagers, occupied with their own lives. Mark handed me some expensive jewelry and then went to play golf. I spent that afternoon alone, just roaming through our silent house. I looked in the mirror and felt a true moment of panic. Who was this woman looking back at me? I was Sarah and Alex's mom. I was Mark's wife. My personal identity had been so totally consumed by my responsibilities that I felt like a ghost in my own life. I knew I wanted more than to just be a supporting character in someone else's story. The sound of a door closing. The final straw wasn't a major fight. It was a moment of pure, soul-crushing clarity. It was the week before Alex was due to go to college. The house was filled with packing boxes and this tense feeling of impending change. We were at the dinner table, the three of us. Alex was on his phone, already mentally checked out and on his way to his new life. I glanced at Mark, my spouse of nearly 25 years, and I tried one final time. My voice was soft, almost a plea. "Mark," I asked, "what are we going to do? When it's just us?" He didn't even look up from the sports section of his newspaper. He took a bite of food, chewed, and then stated without a sign of emotion, "I guess I'll finally get control of the remote again." And that was all. It wasn't meant to be cruel. In his mind, it was probably just a harmless prank. But to me, it was the sound of a door slamming shut for good. It was the last confirmation that a we didn't exist anymore. Our partnership had been a business, and that business was dissolving. He wasn't thinking about a new chapter with me. He was thinking about the television remote. In that single instant, my decision, which had been fermenting for years, cemented. This wasn't some impulsive act of treachery. It was the final, natural step in a long, agonizing process of growing apart. Fraiture, Section 5. The confrontation in the hallway. So when he caught me in the hallway with my baggage, his claim that I was ruining everything we had achieved just felt ludicrous. He was glancing at the facade, the sturdy appearing house. I was the one who had been living within, watching the foundation erode for years. I didn't yell or cry. I was too exhausted for it. I just looked at him, my husband, the stranger I had lived with for a quarter of a century, and told him the truth. "Mark, you can't destroy something that's already gone," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. "We haven't been we for a decade. We've been a management team for our children. And the project is over." The look on his face was one of real shock. He was absolutely blindsided, and in that moment, I understood why he felt betrayed. He sincerely believed we were all right. He had been so concentrated on his job, golf, and playing the part of family guy that he never witnessed the deterioration going right beneath his nose. He assumed I was leaving him that day, but the reality is I had been leaving him, little by little, for 10 years. The physical act of walking out the door was just a formality. A new unwritten chapter. Driving away from that house was the most terrifying and freeing moment of my life. The first several weeks were an almost excruciating mix of loss and freedom. The pain was for the life I believed I'd have, for the guy I married, and for the family I had poured my entire soul into. But the freedom was in the tiny things. Buying the brand of coffee I liked, reading a book in perfect silence, going for a walk without needing to inform anyone where I was going. It was in these simple gestures that I began the painstaking process of finding myself, recalling the woman I was before I became a wife and a mother. I don't regard Mark as a villain. He's a man lamenting the future he envisioned, a future I was no longer a part of. His pain is real, but my decision wasn't about punishing him. It was about saving myself. The paraphraser gray divorce trend is certainly real. For persons over 50, the rate has more than doubled since the 1990s, and for those over 65, it has roughly quadrupled. I recognize now my story isn't uncommon. It's the narrative of numerous women, and men too, who wake up in midlife and realize they're no longer willing to exist in an unfulfilling marriage just because it's comfortable. My story is just one of many, and I know this is a difficult topic. If you've ever felt this way, or have seen a relationship change when the kids leave, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can talk about these things openly. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking and subscribing for more tales about the difficult facts of life and relationships. He believes I waited for the kids to depart to betray him. The reality is, I waited for the kids to leave so I wouldn't have to betray myself any longer. The transgression wasn't in leaving. It was in staying silent for so long, appearing to be content in a partnership that had long since ended. Real closure doesn't come from an apology or from him finally understanding. It happens the moment you stop waiting for permission to start authoring your own next chapter.